Okay, so this session is really all going to focus on the people part of your business. So we have invited the lovely Daniel Welling, who is an MSP recruitment expert, and we thought we'd do something slightly different in this session because recruiters are always putting people under hard interview processes. So me and Richard thought we'd play a little trick on Daniel and put him in the hot seat so that we could interview him. So this session is basically all about you can get us back later. So the session is actually designed to answer recruitment questions that a lot of the Mentori partners have. So we have a set of questions that people have already sent in to us. We're just going to get through as many as we can in the next hour. But still feel free to ask as many questions as you can here and again on the live stream as well. Okay, so first of all, over to you, Daniel. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about who you are?
I would love to do that, yes. Thankfully, I brought a few slides along with me as well, as you might imagine. So, well, who am I? Who is Daniel Welling? So, my first role in IT was in 1995, working for a value-added reseller, and in fact, the majority of my early career for the first 5 or so years was cutting my teeth working for a compact VAR, starting out in entry-level sales and working my way up to sales management. 2002 comes along and I've decided it would be a good idea to start an MSP, although in 2002 we called it an IT support business. Get me started on a debate, I might actually argue that an MSP and an IT support business are fundamentally one in the same thing, but Richard will debate that later.
I will.
Effectively then followed a 12-year roller coaster, which MSPs in the room and watching us on live feed will no doubt identify with. So as it's the first session after lunch, I thought we'd have a little bit of a guess what mood Daniel is in. This was the first mood that I was in, running an MSP. Can anyone tell me what I am there? And remember, we're live. Please. It
hasn't moved. Oh, it has.
Confidence.
Happy.
Happy. Take a sweet out the jar. Take a sweet out the jar. There we are. Happy. So then a minute later. What's going on here then?
MSP owner.
MSP.
No, that's still reseller VAR.
Anyone want to guess what I am there? Don't be shy. No?
Go on, Matt,
No.
say it.
Go on. No, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, kind of. Feels a closest. I'm angry there. So you can see why I'm involved in IT and not an actor at this point. A minute later, what am I here? Close.
Disillusioned. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I am sad. Who's been messing my slides? And then final one, what's going on here? No, I'm confused. So there we are. So I'm looking a bit happier here. So 2014 comes along and I've sold the business, so I'm happy again. And then I won't bore you with what happened in between 14 and 16, but effectively during that period of time I've discovered the MSP community, which when I was in MSP ownership I really didn't partake in at all. I was your typical isolated MSP business owner, and now wherever I can evangelise what Richard was talking about earlier, love MSP networking and encourage everyone to do as much as they can. Spending time with MSPs, though, I realised that I was in a unique opportunity because I understood MSP pain, but also saw the opportunities that presented them as well. So I began working with MSPs and in true MSP fashion, productising what I do. And would you like to ask me a question now?
This is not staged.
No, not at all.
So the first question was, what do you think was the overall key to your success? Because you ran a very successful business and sold it. So what was the key?
I would have to say, and not at all related to the topic of this webinar, but it's people and positions. And I just so happen to have a slide ready to go here.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely right. And thankfully Darren hasn't moved it. So yeah, people and positions. I've heard a lot of the key themes coming through in today's earlier discussions, but we assume that we're in a technology business, but no, we're a people business, and I'm going to chuck a load of cliches out there, but they're all absolutely true, and we've heard it already today. People buy from people, and I guess critically within the MSP environment, rather than a traditional transactional sale, relationships internally and externally are key, because it's those people that manage those relationships, both within the business and within their customers. But it's also important to have people in the right positions. So I can speak from my own experience and others that I talk to, that you can have a great person, but if they're in the wrong role, then they're just going to be stifled, and you're not going to get the right value out of them. So just getting the right people isn't the only answer. And again, you might ask me later on some of the traits that are important for people that work within MSP businesses. First of all, it's people that have an MSP background, because we want growth straight away, so we need to put people in the business that can deliver that growth, and therefore we can't afford necessarily to train and develop them, but that's not always possible. So if we can't have people with backgrounds, then we want multi-client experience, which is certainly one of the key traits that you find across all MSP people, that they're able to jump between different environments, different relationships, and very quickly be effective in that conversation.
So multi-client experience you're talking about, perhaps do you see people when they come out of IT professional roles, like my background, Ernst & Young and people like that, and I'm working with one set of technologies in one role, do they flounder a little bit when they get into the MSP role?
Absolutely. The sheer pace of MSP life, although to be fair, as we move more from a reactive to a proactive working environment, some of that pressure loosens. But yes, someone that's worked in an internal IT department, unless they happen to have the right personality, will really struggle if you dump them into an MSP service desk. And they're like, and you're calling from what? And you've got Gmail, and you've got Office 365, and where do I find and what? You're angry with me? Well, I've only just taken the call. What's going on? So yeah, absolutely essential.
Yeah. Now you're a former MSP yourself. You work with a lot of MSPs now. Is there a thread? Can you see common challenges or pain points that the MSPs that you used to be and the MSP you are you work with now, the sort of issues that they have?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talk about some of them later on in the unprepared presentation. But yeah, you've really touched on a number of them, and I must admit, I was making notes certainly during your session. It's people being in rather than working on the business, if you like, and finding the bandwidth to be able to adjust their environment whilst they're still in the environment. So yeah, most of the MSPs that I talk to or that I'm directly working with effectively all have very similar challenges around that. And as you quite rightly said, those are businesses that recognise they've got a challenge. No, they don't necessarily have all the answers, and then seek out the answers, some passively, some actively, which is, I guess, where you and I would engage with an MSP. The answers are out there, but you need the motivation, the effort to stitch them together. Yeah.
Can we talk specifically about recruitment at the moment? Because one thing that springs to mind there is that businesses, MSPs that I've observed, get themselves into this situation, and perhaps they have a revelation: I need to spend more time on the business rather than in it. I know, I'll go and hire somebody. And then it's like, that That's not like waving a magic wand and hooray, I've got a load of time freed up, because anybody in the room who's hired, you've got to bring somebody on board if it's the right person. From your perspective and what you do now with the MSP recruitment, do you find that frustrating that people come to you? I guess my question should be, at what stage should people be approaching people like yourself to start exploring recruitment?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that the time is when, and I've got a slide on this a bit later actually, where we talk about what value a recruiter adds. But essentially, one of the key things they add is pace. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have the right planning tools when our businesses are younger, and therefore we don't predict when we're going to need to take people on, and therefore we decide we want to take someone on when we need them to start a week ago, and that's really where a recruiter adds that pace, because they've got momentum behind them. I made a placement last night for an existing MSP client, and I found the candidate applied for a role that wasn't at all like what my MSP, but I recognised the attributes of the candidate and their situation, the same with the MSP, so therefore I stitched the two together, and happy days, we've got a placement. But if I'd have, as that MSP, decided I want to hire someone, I'm going to use some of the tools which I'll talk about later, job boards, whatever, and put an ad out, I'd have never found that candidate, and therefore that placement wouldn't have happened, certainly not at the pace.
Yeah.
And what about the setup, Daniel? What does a typical team setup and role setup look like in an MSP?
Well, I'm glad you asked me.
Is this
that.
one you prepared earlier?
Absolutely right. The final point here was about planning those positions. So today I'm going to need a technical director, tomorrow I'm going to need a sales director, so on and so forth. And so understanding that structure, even if you're not there yet, I think is important, and this, I guess, goes into your business planning. Yeah. What I thought I'd do is talk about structure components first of all. So we've got a couple of categories, I think, within an MSP. We've got commercial and we've got technical, and there is a third. Does anyone know what the third category might be?
Is it management?
Mike.
Is it management?
That certainly would be another one. So yeah, take a sweet out the jar for that. But actually, the answer is overlap. So this is where we're blending together commercial and technical skills within a single role or person within the business. And as we know, most MSPs might start with, and Richard alluded earlier to, you start out as a technician, and then you add people and you add roles, and the business grows over time. So effectively, you're splitting out those roles over time. So structure drives revenue, and revenue drives structure, and the two go hand in hand. Am I jumping ahead to the next question now? So, what would an ideal MSP structure look like? Yeah. Well, here's one I prepared earlier, and here we can see that currently Daniel's occupying all of these roles.
Busy man.
Absolutely. You can also see that when I went along and had my professional photos taken, I had a very limited number of photos done, but found that you could have both colour and black and white. So happy days. I won't necessarily talk you directly through this, but broadly speaking, here we've got a technical silo and a commercial silo, and the commercial silo is actually sub-split into what I would call client management and new business, which I think is one of the critical definitions where I would expect, knowing what I know of a VAR environment, is where perhaps some of the challenge in moving to the MSP model would actually lie, expecting a single person to be able to get new business and manage existing customers and grow those existing customers, perhaps with a very complicated commission structure to reward the right behaviours, but you're asking someone to do three things that go in three different directions, and therefore separating out new business, dropping new customers into the business, and managing, farming, developing the existing customer base, and managing the service, the expectations are two very, very different skill sets, but both commercially categorised.
It'd be good to just ask the audience, does everybody here split their teams out into new business and account management? Can we have a show of hands? So most people do split it out. And the same for the live stream. If you could let us know in the chat box how you split your teams out. Do you also have a customer experience team? So you have new business teams, you have account management, and then you have customer experience for retaining the customer, yeah? Yeah, so you have 3 different ones there. Okay, cool.
Brilliant. Okay. These are the roles. It's just my starter for 10. So, and of course, there's lots of other. I haven't even got management on there, but I could quite easily add that as well. The point I was trying to make: 3 categories. I've now got the same structure, but I've actually overlaid here what the responsibilities are that you'd be delegating out through that structure. Again, I've probably already alluded to them in my previous description, but it's important to understand that if you take someone on to do a job, that you allow them to do the job and you don't try and do it for them. And I think that's one of the challenges that any scaling business faces is the letting go.
What you said earlier, really.
Yeah, we were having conversations over lunch, weren't we, as well, about, I won't point them out in the room, people saying perhaps they're struggling when they're sitting in the office as technicians, as I used to be, eavesdropping on conversations and resisting the temptation to jump in and say, oh, this is how you do that. And of course you get on and you don't do any work as the business owner in that case, Which I guess leads to the question, the 2 roles that I hear MSP owners complain about the most with recruitment, or they have the most challenges, tend to be engineers and salespeople. What does a really good personality look like for an engineer, and what does a really good profile personality look like for a salesperson, for instance?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think
that one wasn't planned.
So, and of course, some people consider themselves both in this as well. My view on this is taking technical people first of all. I really look for a hobbyist. I want someone that's passionate about IT, about the topic. Because if you haven't got the passion, then all of that pressure is just going to be, there's going to be no payback at all and no balance. So certainly a hobbyist. The next thing would be accreditations. The advice I give to anyone that I talk to at a candidate stage, where I'm not going to put them forward for an MSP role, and they desperately want to get into the MSP environment, is I'm saying you've got to show the MSPs that you can deal with multi-client, so you need to figure out a way to do that, and you need accreditations to show that you're committed, that when you get home in the evening, you do your CBT nuggets, you start working through your MCPs, you do your CompTIA, because that's what an MSP will be looking for, and that's something that I as a recruiter can sell to the MSP. Look, here is Daniel, he's got something to show, and look, he's proving that he's putting the effort in before he's even working with you. Multi-client background, as we've already talked about. Documenter, I think you mentioned this, absolutely crucial. I've had engineers work for me in the past, and they're absolutely awesome. The customers love them, but they walk away from site, they don't do their timesheets, they don't write anything down, and you know, in truth, I may as well not have paid them or delivered the service to the customer, because it's all going to come unstuck. Eye for detail. All of this pace, excitement going on, you've got to be able to pick out, that's the important thing, and that's something that you just pick up over time. It is an experience, I think, and they've got to be able to communicate exceptionally. And finally, they've got to remain cool under pressure.
Yeah.
I was going to say that the hobbyist bit, but when I was an MSP recruiting, this was, I found a really good sort of litmus test. If, when the CV came in, if they listed technology amongst their hobbies, they're going to be somebody who can actually, roll the sleeves up and get in. We also, it's just a small thing, but we used to look for the email address that the CV came from. So if it was drunkguy67@hotmail.com, not so much, but you'd be surprised. Yeah, if they'd bought a domain with their own name, .co.uk, it showed that they knew a little bit about DNS, about MX records, about, that sort of technology there. So it's a really low bar to be remarkable there, but the hobbyist thing, I think, is very important.
Yeah. Note to self, must change personal email address. So then we come onto the commercial people, and surprisingly or unsurprisingly, I've got ex-technical there. So I've had some fantastic people work for me in the past. Actually, technically, they weren't really developing at the right pace. They couldn't really cut it. But boy, could they talk and hold a conversation with a customer and really engage and persuade, sell. Communicate. So actually, those people make excellent commercial people. I've got ex-new business. So here, really, what I'm talking about is someone that's maybe sold unsuccessfully or insufficiently successfully to make a living out of it, new business, but by that point they know the market, they know the customers, and actually their personality is more farmer rather than hunter, so they make excellent commercial managers. Got to be a relationship builder. They've got to have an interest in business. I would describe myself as a salesperson by trade, but actually I've always kind of seen myself as an entrepreneur or a wantrepreneur, if that's such a phrase. I've always been interested in business. I'm always I'll go and get a coffee and I'll think about the supply chain behind that and how much the people earn and what margin they're making. So I think a natural inquisitiveness, which you could also add to the technical profile as well, I think. Technical awareness. This is one of the key traits that we'll talk about going from perhaps VAR to MSP. Is that technical awareness and understanding, especially being able to communicate that to a non-technical customer. Again, an eye for detail, and no surprise that they need to be able to communicate.
Just on that technical one then, so I think there's two sides to this. I think that sometimes it can be a bad thing for salespeople to have too much technical skills because they get pulled into a technical conversation too quick and they forget to sell. But on the other side, in today's industry, some of the partners, I think, Tim, me and you had this conversation before about the technical people are able to better spot upsell and cross-sell opportunities. So, say, for example, you have a Microsoft update, a 365 update. The technical experts know where that's going to help prospective customers, whereas the salesperson doesn't. Tim, I think we had this conversation, didn't we, before? Is the mic there for Tim? Because you've got a lot of technical people in your business, haven't you?
We're more technically focused as a business, just of where we've come from history and that. My best salespeople are my technical people. Yeah. Because it goes back to this, I think Richard said before, nobody likes to be sold to anymore. They don't want to, and the technical people don't sell to they just want to, if you've got those profiles, quite rightly, and they have a passion for technology, they just want to provide the solution to the customer. Yeah. And it's not selling. So if they've got the trust in the technical person to deliver that, you don't have the barriers to the sell. Yeah. But they are two different animals. It is, you won't get two with both of those. It just doesn't happen. The technical people can do the solution. They will tell what the customer they want for the need, what the customer needs, but they won't be able to close it.
They won't close it. Yeah, so you still need that salesperson in to close it.
Thanks, Tim. You're absolutely correct. And just to add, if you do have someone that can do both of those things, they're probably already running an MSP business or about to. Absolutely.
Yeah, can make a point actually. Who in the room here sends their engineers out for floor walks at clients? Who knows what I mean when I talk about floor work? So a floor walk for me would be sending your engineer out to site, typically with cakes, but that's just me because I love cakes. Go out there with no specific purpose, or maybe a flimsy reason we're here to, to tie up some cables or do some labelling or something. But then send your engineer to have a little wander around and say, hey, tap people on the shoulder, how's things going? What I found when as an MSP owner, we had a ton of business come back from that for all the reasons you mentioned. It's not a salesperson going in there to try and sell to them. It's somebody who they trust, who is an advocate for the business, going in and saying, is there anything we can help with? And the engineers were coming back with all sorts of opportunities, from a small printer in the corner to, a whole new server, and all sorts of things would crop up. So people do have that trust in technicians, don't they?
I think that goes back to what Dawn was saying before, is that you're fixing their problems.
Yeah.
Okay, because what they see the technical person is the ability to make their life easier.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why the guards go straight down. So we do exactly that. Our engineers go out and just sit in there for a day.
Yeah.
They're not just working on that account. They can do all sorts of different things, but they just listen, and then they're solving problems. And that ultimately, as they come back for a salesperson to then go, well, you need this. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do. Trevor just said I need that. And they sign it off.
Yeah. So not to talk Daniel out of a job recruiting all these salespeople for MSPs, but the low-hanging fruit I've always found is within the existing clients. Mm-hmm. Rather than going out finding new clients, there's a lot of business within existing clients to find. So load your engineers up with donuts and send them out there and watch when the business comes back.
Mm-hmm. So that's your upsell strategy, which is great. So a question we get asked all the time, especially from traditional reseller VARs who are going into this MSP model, they don't have the luxury a lot of the time to set up these separate teams. So, separate technical, separate new business, separate account management, separate customer experience teams. Mm-hmm. So what advice would you give them in terms of using multi-roles until they get to the point of being able to do that, and at what point should they?
Okay, yeah, I guess for me, the technical role probably isn't going to necessarily be a multi-role. I mean, you might have escalations and projects, for example, being carried out by the same group of engineers, and when you get to a certain scale, you would have project teams and escalation teams for efficiency. I think that the hardest split to get to straight away is the split of responsibility for finding these opportunities within the existing accounts versus finding new business. So splitting that down per my structure is probably the most critical one to get straight away. And if you can't have a new business and an account manager or client manager and a technician, then sacrifice the client manager and put those responsibilities to the engineers, because that's the next best thing. But fundamentally, I would, and again, this is all about balance, and the MSP needs to ensure that someone carries responsibility for finding the opportunities and carrying a revenue number, which they for new business, but also for managing the existing business as well. So reducing client attrition, upselling, cross-selling, etc. So someone has to own that, and if you don't have anyone doing that role in the long term, and it's on the technicians, then I would fear that the technicians would be pressured in terms of not being able to fulfill their role fully. So yeah, eventually I see it as 3 roles, but definitely where I see danger would be if you're asking one person to do account management and new business, which is often the hat people wear. Well, you're a sales guy, so you can do both. But actually, that's where I see the biggest risk, because the two would be commissioned differently, and yeah,
they go into their comfort zone in account management, don't they, rather than focus on the new business.
Exactly, or vice versa. They they love the thrill of the chase. They're real new business people, and they don't go and take the donuts in, and if no one else is taking the donuts in, then the donut industry is just gonna go.
There's no danger of the donut industry dying with me around, to be honest. But yeah, can we do a deeper dive into some of the recruitment stuff? I'm intrigued in the room and for the live stream audience here. Who has recruited somebody in the last 6 months?
Oh wow!
Yeah, who's recruiting somebody at the moment? Yeah. How are you, Jeremy? How are you feeling about the process?
Nervous.
Okay, nervous. Why?
Yeah, I think my problem is actually geographical location of the country. So I've got offices in Bristol, Birmingham and Gloucester, and our technical resources are mainly out of our Gloucester office, and so there's not a lot of resources around. And they do tend to come in just working at one company and not understanding multi environments. I have recently, mind you, where we've been taking people on, we've been doing profiling tests on them as well to see where they are. Yep. And then we've done them throughout all of the service desk and all the project engineers as well. So we've put all their scores onto a spreadsheet and we can see where the person is against all my other staff. And I don't actually list to say Fred is here, Dave's there. I just show where they are. And that actually works quite good because you actually get to see what's under the bonnet. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, very nervous, and there's not. I don't think there's a good pool of technical people around.
Yeah. Anybody else? Just because I want to ask you next, where do all the good candidates hide? But I'll leave you to stew on that for a minute. Anybody else who's hiring at the moment and feel equally sort of nervous, or anybody on the live stream out there? Yeah, Tracy.
You got Mike?
Okay. So we've got a comment that's come saying we've been recruiting for sales activity for the past 6 months.
Right.
So they're clearly having some problems there. Another person's put, I'm finding more and more businesses are outsourcing their sales team, which to me makes sense. No sales training costs, more cost effective, etc. What does Daniel think about this?
Well, I have to say I'm a big advocate of outsourcing. I think we have to, drink our own Kool-Aid, if that's the right application of that phrase. We're asking, as MSPs, our customers to outsource their IT to us, and if there's an element of our business that we can outsource, then and I know there'll be further coverage of that topic a little bit later on. I think an outsourced approach to certainly new business, I think is a good solution, but I would. I think ultimately, if I was paring down to, what's the absolute core of what I want to keep internally, I think I want to keep that client relationship role internal. I think that would be really difficult to outsource, but probably not impossible either. I would say new business, and in fact the whole funnel. From the marketing to the sales, to the point where here is a customer ready to onboard. That whole process could be outsourced. Yeah.
So the human aspect of digital marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can I throw an alternative in there, just because I like causing trouble? Lots of MSPs that I've come across look at outsourcing sales, when actually the best salesman in the business is usually the business owner or the senior management team. And so some of the advice that I give them is outsource the other stuff that you're doing at the moment, outsource the admin, outsource the finance, outsource the technical. So you've got businesses like Continuum and others out there that can take that load off you to free up your time to go out and do more of what you do best, which is the selling aspect. So, not to be contrary for the sake of it, but outsourcing sales sometimes is an abdication of responsibility, when actually the best salesman in the business can be the business owner themselves. So.
Yeah.
And I think we're both right, which is a good news. So we'll still have a beer later, and a donut maybe. But yeah, we're both right, because I think it's the size of the business that's relative to that answer. So absolutely, if you're at the stage where you're trying to develop the business, where you are not any longer involved in it, then yeah, you can't still be doing the new business sales, because otherwise the business, assume an average rate of attrition, let's say within 5 to 10 years, you'd have no customers left if you weren't adding new business. Therefore, that's intrinsic to the value of the business. So, but yeah, at the smaller stage, absolutely spot on. Again, another cliche, but the only real unique thing about one MSP to another is the people. So that's the thing, and typically led by the owner, the visionary. So really, at the smaller scale, that owner's going to attract the customers, and then the challenge for them is to wean them off of the owner, to the point where they then understand the bigger business, and you come for the owner, but you stay for the fact that it's now a much bigger business and there's continuity and all of those sorts of things, which means the owner can exit or be away from the business, which is probably their ambition at some point.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So hopefully that's answered James's question. We had a couple of comments come in as well. Somebody said we don't have split roles at all at the minute. And another comment to say that on-site FaceTime is hugely important. Chat up the teams. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah,
I think one thing just to add in there as well with the outsourcing part is, I think what we'll see going forward, and we're already starting to see some of this now, is especially if you're moving from reseller VAR into MSP, a lot of the transactional selling will be outsourced or it'll be automated. Yeah. And this is where you can use the power of AI and business intelligence to help you to deal with the transactional part and put your people on what they're best at, which is account management and dealing with new customers. Yeah. So I think you'll see that going as well.
Yeah. So let's get back to that question I asked you. Where are all the good candidates? There's got to be some out there, right?
Well, while we were having that other discussion, I just quickly knocked up a PowerPoint on it. So, well, where are the candidates hiding? So, probably under your nose. Again, the answer to this is potentially infinite, but I've put a couple of areas down. So internally, I can't remember if I alluded to it earlier or in a conversation with someone else, but effectively you could have people in the business that they're technical at the moment, but they're not developing at the right pace, and you've got an opportunity on the commercial side, so potentially be moving them across. Perhaps it's easier to find someone technical, granted none of it's easy, but easier, than it is to find someone that's a ready-made account manager with MSP experience, and they really are hen's teeth. But obviously, as I say, it gives you a second gap. You're just moving the problem around the table. I would be uncovering these opportunities, during the regular review appraisal process, subject to how big and how much your management team sits in between you and the candidate. LinkedIn, great presentation earlier from Dawn. I've written a couple of things down there, best LinkedIn friends, if that's the right businessy term for it. But effectively, if you invest a bit of time, you're 10 people a day, all of the MSPs in Birmingham, Bristol, Gloucester, sorry. Just connect with all the people. That way they'll start to know you. Then when you put an ad out on LinkedIn that you're recruiting for a role, if they're at a point where they're looking to move, then they may well come to you. But then you'd need to support that with a welcoming environment on your website. So you'd want to be talking about why yours is a great MSP to work at, why it's great for the candidate. You'd need to be talking competitive numbers, because people don't like applying for roles unless they know what the salary is. I know I wouldn't. So there's a bit to do there, but LinkedIn is an awesome tool, I'd be using it. The problem is it takes time. So if you've decided you need an engineer today, then you might get lucky on LinkedIn. I'm not saying you won't, even a broken clock is right twice a day. But actually, you know, in reality, the odds are it's going to take time. So.
And what about salaries? What can you share with us? What the average salary is? What should we be offering for technical? What should we be offering for sales?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have to flick through a couple of slides because we're going on for time anyway. So yeah, in terms of again taking the sort of the two silos of category, so technical package, generalist MSP at this level. So I would have a range anywhere between 18 and 45 grand. First to fourth level, if you use the term fourth level. Is
that a fourth level engineer?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that's basically a third level engineer, but that can quite happily support internal IT teams. Back in the day, I'd have called it a 3.5 level. And in fact, I actually talk about people in the 0.1 increments when I'm either selling to or establishing what my view of them is. I'll say, well, actually, I think you're 1.5 or a 1.7, right. And to set them on that scale effectively. So, subject to where you are in the country, you may be saying, "What's the crocodile? 45 grand for an engineer?" Well, actually, if you apply a 75% utilisation rate and you want to make a 50% margin on their costed. Fully costed employment, then you need to sell at £750 a day or £100 an hour, which actually is pretty much where I would say most MSPs should be aiming for, without putting a number in terms of this is what I think MSPs should sell for. But just to put this into perspective, if you're getting 65 quid as an average sell rate. Just imagine what that does to the ability to be able to recruit people and still make that margin. So when it's just you selling at 65 quid, happy days. That's that's good margin because it's 100%, right? But when you've actually got to pay someone to do the job and then manage them and all of those costs of employment as well, that's where you need to be thinking now. Rather than I can sell at 65 and make a good margin, and then I'll worry about getting people up to £100 an hour. And again, today you'll already be strategising: how am I going to get to 110, 120, 140 an hour, etc.
And is the average day rate around £750 for an engineer? That's in pounds for the learners online. Is that about an average fee, or? Yeah.
I was looking around the room as you were revealing those figures just to sort of gauge reaction from people, and I half expected some people to like gasp or whatever, but it seems as though is everybody sort of paying these rates at the moment? Is this sort of fitting in, or is anybody shocked by what they say here? No? Yeah, so everybody's about on board with that. Yeah.
Good.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously needing to add an overtime element to it as well. So if they're doing projects evenings and weekends, although to be fair, some of the traditional projects that were absolutely evening and weekend of lesson now, but still some clients will always want potential disruption minimised. And then subject to how you deal with your out of hours, without giving anything away, Phil coming up later, as a way of taking this responsibility away from your engineers. You'd have some kind of budget in there for that. So commercial packages, again, I've split this into new business and client management. So new business is probably very similar to what most VARs would already have as a split. So a 50-50 base and OTE. The base will be anywhere between 25 and 45, I would say. Although again, you'll get exceptions to that. Within the MSP environment, though, you're really wanting to make that commission based on what your business ambition is. So effectively we're talking here about new clients or new seats onboarded, and then a residual for prior success to reward there. But effectively you're not working to a GP number necessarily, and then affecting how that is paid out. You're working to different metrics to ensure that their behaviour is I need to get new customers. Then when I get new customers, someone else will then make sure that those customers are properly managed.
Can I just ask on that then? So you're targeting the new starters on recurring revenue as opposed to GP?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody's made that transition over, so they're measuring recurring revenue. Are you? Yeah. Cool.
Commercial manager. I guess to Tim's point about not being salesy, yeah, I absolutely see the commercial manager as not someone that comes across salesy, but they do carry responsibility for the profitability. Here I would actually have them mostly as a base. I would expect that base to be 25 to 45, and I would expect there to be a bonus, say 10 to 20%, but not linked to specific clients and deals, right? Because we don't want them to. We want them to curate our entire estate evenly. We don't want them neglecting customers, because that's going to hurt our attrition, which makes we've got to sell new business even faster to make up the business we're losing. You might ask me at some point about other benefits that might apply as well. So just in case you did, technical package. I'd want to have mapped salary increases and ideally link those to accreditations, because I want to get another Microsoft badge. So I know I need someone to do an Azure MCP or this, that, or the other, and I want to map that out and then know that Daniel's doing that, other Daniel's doing that, and so on and so forth. Bit of monetary support for access to things like CBT nuggets, paying for exams, and then set time in the schedule for learning as well. So every week you'll get 4 hours, but it won't necessarily be 4 hours straight on a Friday afternoon. It'll be your hours here, there, etc. But it will be predetermined. You log it as a ticket, and we monitor your time. And then, so part of this, delegate or automate. Advocate of networking, going to industry events, talking to people. That's not just for us that are lucky enough to be here today. This should be for our staff, our teams as well.
Important, isn't it?
Yeah. And to offer someone that isn't perhaps at a management role the opportunity to go out, represent their company, learn and bring back ideas. That's really empowering, and it's going to give them a lot of confidence. And I'll talk if I talk quicker and get to the slide. I'll talk later about effectively, just as you are with your customer base, making sure you're protecting them from other MSPs coming along and saying, oh, we could do that better. The same is for your staff as well, because guess what? I've just told everyone that you should be connecting with your competitors' staff. So actually everyone's going to do that, and then everyone will know everyone. But actually that's a good thing for the industry, and not everyone will do it, because not everyone will do 10 connections every day. So commercial package, so new business people, they want a steady source of leads, because these guys are, they're strikers. They don't want to be down the other end, getting the ball and then running up. They want to be sort of a halfway line maximum. So if they don't get the leads, they can't convert them. So that's what they want. They want flexible working. I think we talked about flexible working in an earlier conversation as well, and it's just as true for the commercial manager. They also want flexibility, and a bonus linked to the KPIs that you're setting them, so they can see a clear, I achieved this, and I get this number, but as I say, not linked to specific clients or business.
And I think on this part here, guys, it's really important because especially as we are recruiting more millennials into the industry, you've got a lot of Gen Z people now coming into the industry. They do not focus just on salary. They would rather take a lower salary but go for a company who will offer them more personal development, who would offer them more certifications, more training, more employee benefits, more flexibility. So if your employee packages haven't changed and transformed in line with your business transformation, it's really something to look at, because you're not going to be a good company for a potential recruit if you're not able to offer these good packages today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're nearly out of time, so I think we need to go on to some of the things that I think everybody will want. Do you have a good job spec? No way. Have you got one ready?
Way. So
I asked Daniel to prepare a job spec that we can share with you so that when you're writing your job specs, you've got a good template.
Absolutely. So I've put a couple of bullets here, but don't worry about it, because I've also put a live spec up here. It hasn't translated very well across 2 slides, so I was aware of the slides. But we've got a handout that I believe will be accessible after the event. But yeah. This is although I'm a salesperson, this is a sales process recruiting. So you've got to be selling to the candidates. The job spec is effectively like a sales presentation, a brochure, a one-pager. It's describing why they should come and work for you, what technology you're going to be exposing them to, how they're going to grow, and how you're going to support them. That's what the job spec is all about.
Okay, so we will give you a copy of that after the presentation today, if that's okay. So I think we have lots of questions that are coming in. Tracy, could we do questions, please?
Yeah, we have a question that's come in. It says, how can Daniel believe that an external sales resource could well work on demand? I'm not confident that a salesman works well for me if only engaged by opportunity as an external resource. It's quite an interesting view.
Good question, though.
Okay. Say again, they don't believe it would work because they're external?
Yeah, because they're an external... Because they're an external resource and therefore not engaged 100% of the time on that person's business.
Yeah, I think we just have to agree to disagree to be honest. Yeah, I think like all of these things, some things work all the time, some of the time, yeah, if you are you could have someone working for you that isn't motivated, that isn't well managed and doesn't perform. Equally, you could have someone that actually thrives in a multi-client environment themselves, where they actually grow as a person because they are selling for more than one, perhaps MSP or perhaps different businesses. Maybe some are MSP and some are complementary. So yeah, I think potato.
We have another one from Philip.
Yeah, and for that, I would agree with Daniel there. I think for the person that asked that question online, I would challenge the view of why do you assume that because someone's on your payroll that they are working for you 100% of the time? You know, we have a duty to keep those people motivated too. So the question for you, Daniel, in recruiting, in the culture that we are in at the moment, and Fiona mentioned millennial mindsets, etc., how important are company values and vision and mission as part of a recruitment strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, part of the mix. I guess in terms of how the leaders of a business have set out their stall and how they communicate it. So yeah, I would expect that to be part of that process, which unfortunately we won't necessarily get time to go through today. Certainly during the interview process will be I expect candidates to be interviewing the potential employer, as much as they're employing them. So, and in fact, I always advise my candidates to do exactly that, to have a big pile of questions in the same way as I advise my employers to do the same thing. Have a big pile of questions. You may not get through them all, but you've got to come away thinking, I want to work there for these reasons, and that will be vision, it will be the environment, it will be the technology they're working with, it will be the amount of money that they will either earn now or will have the opportunity to earn in the future as they get supported in their development.
We touched upon it earlier in the first session, didn't we, about sharing your story as you go along, and I mentioned you will attract like-minded people merely by sharing who you are, being authentic about it and sharing the ups and downs and the challenges and that. So I think as well as attracting clients, you can attract potential employees as well if you put yourself out there.
Yeah, and that was the final point on the job spec actually. Be authentic.
And I think with things like Glassdoor today, do you all have a look on Glassdoor to see what your reviews are? I mean, most people I know looking for jobs today, the first place they look is Glassdoor. So having good reviews and a good score up there for your company is going to be key. Okay, any more questions? We're down to the last few minutes. Nick, can we get a microphone to Nick, please? Oh, we have two, do we? Or
Hi guys. So just a quick question about Glassdoor actually. We've got one review on Glassdoor and it's terrible, and it was obviously from a disgruntled employee of ours, and I had thought about how to handle it, and my first thought was to tell everybody that works for me to go on there and do a review, but then I backtracked on that and decided to hold fire. But do you have any recommendations around that?
I don't actually. Hearing you describe the situation now, I think I would probably be honest and polite. I can't actually think whether is there an opportunity to reply?
There is an opportunity to reply, So you could go on, Nick, and put your view on without obviously putting the person down, because they're obviously angry, they're upset at something, that's why they've made the comment. But I would encourage your existing team members to go on to make the comment, because it's a score system. So the score system with more good ones will push that up for you.
Yeah. To encourage your existing team and even ex-employees to go on there and leave a review.
Absolutely.
Against it, it can actually turn into a positive for you. So if you think about TripAdvisor, if you go and have a look at somewhere and it's all 5-star ratings, you smell a rat, right? But if there's one or two and you think the crank reviews, as I put it, you're like, there we go, and it looks a little bit more legitimate, doesn't it? So, yeah,
that's great. Thanks, guys.
All right. Any other questions?
Virtual. Right, so we have a question that says an MSP group that Daniel is starting in London was mentioned earlier. Any further details?
Since this morning.
So Chris and I had our our inaugural call on this last night at about 6 o'clock. It literally is brand new. We'll hopefully be releasing details shortly. On my website, I actually already have some MSP networking opportunity groups. So CompTIA, the Thames Valley Group, for example. The Manchester group that Robert runs, and so on and so forth. So information will appear there shortly, but hopefully our industry colleagues will help us share the news. But check back on the website. We're hoping to have our first meeting in April. So that's the timeline.
We'll promote it for you when
we
you
will.
have it. Okay, so we are now out of time, but one thing that we didn't get to, and I just want to spend 30 seconds on that, is recruiters, believe it or not, generally have a very bad reputation. So let's address the elephant in the room. The reason I asked Daniel to come and join us today is Daniel doesn't work the traditional recruitment model. So, he specialises in working with MSPs, and therefore his commission and his charging model is in line with MSPs. So instead of you paying the traditional 20-25% on base salaries and everything else, yours is actually 11% monthly recurring, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. Effectively, I've applied the MSP model to recruitment pricing. So 11% of the monthly salary for up to the first 24 months. So in effect, 104-week reducing rebate. So someone leaves at 6 months, you've paid 5.5% as a fee. Someone stays 24 months, you've paid 22%, but you've got an employee that stayed for 2 years, which probably means you'll have them for another 2. So effectively moving the cash flow implication of recruitment to align with the MSP cash flow.
I can see a lot of smiles around the room there. I suspect you're going to get a lot of phone calls and emails after
I do hope so, and there is my email address. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so
thank
you,
Daniel.
Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.